Garden, and welcome back to Character Corner. I'm Avalon Roselin, indie author, and your soda-loving investigator for the evening. I'm trying to talk about my own characters and do art more often this year, so hopefully Character Corner will become a monthly series. This month's character was voted for by my supporters. I gave them the option of the 4 different leads from the Stellar Eclipse series, and the vote was tied between Baltan and Aeriel. Since Baltan is the deuteragonist of Cloudless Rain, I decided to start with him. Aeriel has actually already received something of a Character Corner entry in TennelleFlowers Drawing a Blank series, back when he used to take commissions for things like that. It's a few years old now, but it's still a good video. I'll link it below. As I said, Baltan is the deuteragonist of Cloudless Rain, playing opposite to series protagonist Azzy. And personally, Baltan is one of my favorite characters ever. He's sarcastic and almost always has a quippy one-liner ready to go. He has anxiety, he drinks way too much soda, he's a sharpshooter, he's a short king, and he loves Aeriel with all his heart, even though he's convinced they will never be together. And now, in the Weathering the Storm edition of Cloudless Rain, he's allowed to swear. One of the reasons that I ended up re-editing Cloudless Rain is that at the time that I published it, I still wasn't fully comfortable writing about adult topics. I was still nervous about how my parents might react to reading my work. Now that I'm in my 30s, I'm a little more confident with things like having characters who swear, drink, smoke, and/or have sex. I'm still not wholly interested in writing full sex scenes, at least not in my published works, but I am at least more comfortable with a character like Baltan, who is, in Cloudless Rain, approaching 30 years old, and allowing him to act a little more like he's 30 and has a lot of life experience under his belt. And hey, let's talk a little about Baltan's life experience. Baltan is from the eastern side of the continent Aishan, which now actually gets a name mentioned in the first book instead of being largely unnamed for the whole series. He immigrated to the West when he was a child to live and study law with his uncle. He had an older sister at that time who unfortunately passed away while he was in the West. Losing his sister, and then his parents shortly after, shook Baltan to his core, and like many who face tragedy at a young age, he questioned the fairness of the world. In particular, he questioned the existence of his family's god Kalpi, the four-headed god of justice. How could justice exist in a world that took his family away for no reason? They were good people, so why did bad things happen to them? Ultimately, Baltan decided that the only logical answer was that gods couldn't exist, and if they did, they had no interest in aiding their worshippers. This put him at odds with his deeply traditional uncle. In Eastern society, a person's place is determined by the gods they and their family worship. Being an atheist is highly irregular, even in the West, where the Eastern churches have less direct power over people's lives. So at 14, Baltan ended up running away to join the investigative department of Marina Delta as a homicide investigator. Baltan was a prodigy, but still too young to go out into the field on his own. Fortunately, another young man happened to come into the crosshairs of the investigative department, Aeriel. Aeriel came from a city morgue in Marina Omega, where he had just cataloged the dead bodies of 30 Azure children, and was out to find their killer and bring him to justice. At first, these two did not get along at all. Aeriel was much more hot-blooded than we see him in Cloudless Rain, which I think is perfectly understandable given the circumstances. Likewise, Baltan didn't have the respect for him that we see in Cloudless Rain. Forcing the two of them to work together was the investigative department's way of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. They had a babysitter for their overly eager and arrogant rookie, and something to occupy the Azure who wouldn't leave them alone until those kids had justice. Through the trials and struggles of working out that first case, Baltan and Aeriel eventually came to an understanding and mutual respect for each other that grew as they worked on more cases together. For a while, they were simply co-workers, then friends, and by the time Baltan reached his 20s and started thinking of leaving the life of a homicide detective behind, he began to see Eureka as more. He proposed the idea of early retirement to Eureka 10 years into their partnership, and Eureka agreed. He also proposed marriage, to which Eureka did not agree. Broken-hearted, but nonetheless determined and practical to a fault, Baltan and Eureka began a life together as roommates, and nothing more. For a while, Baltan was able to find satisfaction in that, and in going out to bars and clubs and hooking up on occasion. However, at the start of Cloudless Reign, this is no longer enough to occupy his time, and he has fallen into a bit of a depression, longing to do something more meaningful with his life and fully aware that he cannot relate to most people his age because they haven't been through what he has. Only Eureka fully understands him. This is why, when Eureka brings home a corpse and a case, Baltan, somewhat reluctantly, agrees to help him solve it. Maybe a taste of the life he left behind, the closeness of working with Eureka, the thrill of solving a case and bringing a killer to justice is what he needs to feel whole again. But that world comes with danger, and he left it behind for a reason. Like most Easterners, Baltan has dark skin and light hair. His skin tone is somewhere in the middle of the range of tones that Easterners can have, and in Cloudless Reign he's a little paler than usual from the shut-in life he's been leading for the last few months. His hair is on the darker end, being a more saturated blonde. Baltan is shorter than average due to picking up a smoking habit in his teen years, which he had to kick before Eureka would agree to live with him, and he replaced it with drinking copious amounts of soda instead, since the caffeine helped curb his nicotine craving. He prefers to wear mostly black and gray clothes. Baltan's eyes are silver specifically, which has some implications in the world building of Stellar Eclipse. Just like different tribes of Azures are known for different qualities and have different animal features, Easterners also have some varieties that have special abilities too. Easterners' eyes are generally some shade of gray, ranging from nearly black to nearly white. Yes, I'm sure there's a 50 Shades of Grey joke here. Please feel free to make it in the comments. In Eastern culture, there's a superstition that certain eye colors come with certain additional traits. Those with darker eyes are said to have better night vision, and are encouraged to take extra care to protect their eyes during the day. Those with lighter eyes are said to have keener sight in the bright light of day, but weaker night vision. Baltan's silver eyes, being on the lighter end of the spectrum, can supposedly see through the glare of light on reflective surfaces. While Baltan doesn't put much stock in superstition, viewing it much the same way he views religious practice, he isn't a sharpshooter for nothing. I always like to include 3 positive traits and 3 negative ones in my character reference sheets. On the positive end of things, Baltan is determined. Once he starts something, he sees it through. He's also incredibly loyal to those that he becomes attached to, and he is very intelligent. On the negative side, he tends to be a pessimist. His anxiety can get the better of him, and while his intelligence is a great quality of his, it comes paired with stubbornness. I don't add songs from the characters' playlists onto the character sheet itself, but I do like to talk about them in these videos because music is such a big part of my writing process and how I develop characters. First up for Baltan is You're Gonna Go Far Kid by The Offspring, because it is the edgy high school pop punk song that both I and Baltan would be into at that age. Also, it slaps, and I will not apologize for it. Hold Back the River by James Bay is the Baltan and Eureka love song to me. Just these two people who are so good together, but because of various circumstances and their own self-esteem issues, they can't let themselves be happy together, but they still love each other, damn it! And lastly, Blame by Air Traffic Controller suits Baltan's mental state at the start of the book, sort of getting out of his funk and finding purpose in life again. And if you've read Cloudless Reign, you know that it takes on another meaning by the end. And one last note before I wrap this up. Previously, I had Baltan listed as bisexual, but over time, I think I've come to understand him better as a gay man. I've also had more than one person come to me with the headcanon that he's a trans man. While I didn't originally write him as a trans man, I could definitely see it. After talking it over with my husband, who is the maker of canon things, you know what? In the Weathering the Storm edition, he's trans now. So that'll be fun to work into the expanded scenes that come with Weathering the Storm. You know, this actually has some hilarious implications because it means that Baltan chose the name Baltan for himself. In the world building of Stellar Eclipse, Baltan is a very generic Eastern name, meaning firstborn son. It's about as common as Steve, James, or Michael. He really picked the first name that popped into his head and stuck with it. So that's Baltan, Deuteragonist of Cloudless Rain, the first book in the Stellar Eclipse series. The Weathering the Storm edition should be available this year. I'm going to try to get the preview up on my Ko-fi for free with a pay-what-you-want option by March. We'll see. Thank you so much to my supporters who voted in the poll. I'll have another one up soon to decide who will be featured in February's Character Corner. If you'd like to vote and support the work that I do, please check out the links in the description to support me on Ko-fi or Patreon. What do you think of Baltan? Do you have any questions about him that didn't get answered here? Leave a comment below to let me know, and keep growing until next time, Rose Garden.